Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We've broken down just about every single commitment that Auburn has gained through the transfer portal over the last couple of weeks. And with that transfer portal window largely winding down, kind of getting geared up for winter workouts and spring practice, I think it's a good time to take a step back and just evaluate what Auburn has done in the transfer portal up until this point. When you start evaluating this transfer portal class, it starts with what Jackson Arnold is going to be for this Auburn team in 2025. And largely, I think Hugh Freeze has hitched his tenure at Auburn to the play of Jackson Arnold. I give Hugh Freeze a lot of credit. There's a lot of head coaches across the college football landscape that just want to keep their job and they'll play it safe. Hugh Freeze certainly could have done that. They could have gone out and gotten a guy like Caden Salter, who would have come in for Auburn as a fifth-year senior, probably given them solid quarterback play, better quarterback play than what they had in 2024, no doubt about that. But was Caden Salter going to be a guy that elevates Auburn to an SEC championship caliber team? We're not sure. That we think that ceiling might have been capped a little bit. You look at Jackson Arnold, although it's a bigger risk because we haven't exactly seen Jackson Arnold play a ton of great football during his time at Oklahoma his first 2 years. That ceiling is kind of a little bit of an unknown. Like we all know, Jackson Arnold can be a very, very good football player going back to his days out of high school. And so I think what Hugh Freeze did say, hey, we could play it safe. We could grab a quarterback that we could go 8-4, maybe 9-3 with, or we could go out and get a guy in Jackson Arnold where the floor might be a little bit lower because we haven't necessarily seen him play his best football, but that ceiling, what if Jackson Arnold maximizes what he can be as a football player? It's really high, and it allows Auburn to have that SEC championship caliber play in them heading into 2025. That's a decision that a lot of coaches decide not to make. I give Hugh Freeze a ton of credit for saying, hey, I'm going to push my chips into the middle of the table and go bet on Jackson Arnold. And the matter of fact is, look, Jackson Arnold very well could be an elite quarterback for Auburn, win a lot of football games, and then Hugh Freeze and this Auburn program are kind of taking off. There's also a reality that Jackson Arnold does not work out. And this Auburn team is not all that great in 2025. And if you get that, you probably are talking about a new head coach over the next couple of years. So I appreciate Hugh Freeze pushing the chips into the middle of the table. And what inspires me most about Jackson Arnold is that, look, that this kid had no shot to be good at Oklahoma in 2024. It was a brutal offensive line. He was throwing to a bunch of walk-on wide receivers in the SEC. Auburn fans know more than anybody else. If you don't have a good offensive line, you don't have talent around the quarterback, a.k.a. a guy like Bo Nix, it's hard for any quarterback to be good in that situation. There's a real shot that Jackson Arnold behind an offensive line that I think is going to be pretty damn good with wide receivers that might be the best in the conference. There's a reality where Jackson Arnold emerges as one of the more dangerous quarterbacks in the country, but that is largely what this transfer portal class is hitching their wagon to. Now, there are also some other additions that I want to talk about. How I think we're going to do this is, one, broad takeaways from the transfer portal cycle for Auburn, then get into some superlatives, talk about some players that I really like for Auburn going into 2025 before we get into it. As always, for the Auburn fans, I would love to hear how y'all are feeling heading into spring practice. There's a lot of talent on this roster. I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic, and we're in the middle of January. There's no reason to be pessimistic. If and when the bad stuff happens, we'll talk about it. But right now, if you're an Auburn fan, I think what you're thinking about is, look, Jackson Arnold's coming in, former 5-star quarterback, super talented, with a solid offensive line, elite pass catchers on the outside. That's it, at least to me, the frame that Auburn fans should have going into spring practice. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into this one. Now, I just gave my take on Jackson Arnold. Super excited to see what this kid can be in 2025. The other thing I appreciate the most with Auburn is that they built around him too. And they said, hey, we're not going to make the same mistake Oklahoma made. We're not going to bring Jackson Arnold over with question marks on the offensive line and not elite playmakers on the outside. So they bring in Jackson Arnold, but they also go out and bring some big-time pieces on the offensive line. They go out and land a guy like Eric Singleton Jr., who is one of the best pure wide receivers you see in all of college football. They built a Ferrari of an offense. Now the question is, can Jackson Arnold go drive it? And I think there's a lot of optimism that he can, and he can maximize that car. And if you can maximize a Ferrari, we all know it. Well, I certainly don't know what it feels like to drive a Ferrari at a high level, but I'd imagine it's pretty sweet. Superlatives. Biggest impact transfer portal addition. We're not going to talk about Jackson Arnold. I think a lot of Auburn fans would say Eric Singleton Jr., which I certainly would not argue with. I'm going to go with former Virginia Tech offensive tackle, Xavier Chaplin. And I'm going to go with Xavier Chaplin for a couple of different reasons. We're going to pull his face up right here on the screen. Why I think Xavier Chaplin is such a massive addition and arguably can have the biggest impact on this Auburn football team is, one, you got a premier starting left tackle. Bona fide stud that's graded out extremely well at Virginia Tech the last 2 years, has 25 starts under his belt. These kind of guys are just really hard to find, and Auburn was able to find them. Now, I think you immediately upgrade the left tackle position, but landing Xavier Chaplin allows you to put Dylan Wade back at guard. And I think that's what Auburn wanted to do all along last year, but Percy Lewis obviously did not cut it at tackle, so Dylan Wade had to bounce around. Xavier Chaplin's kind of bona fide. Percy Lewis, there were some question marks. He was obviously a really, really big kid that maybe was struggling a little bit with some of the athleticism that he saw in the SEC. To me, I look at Xavier Chaplin and say that they ain't many question marks about him. If he stays healthy, he's starting all 12-plus games for Auburn at left tackle, which allows Dylan Wade to play his ideal spot, that's left guard. And then you have Connor Lewis center. And you built 3/5 of your offensive line you feel absolutely great about. And then you add some depth in a guy like Mason Murphy, who can very clearly come in and compete not only at right tackle, but I think he could be a really good right guard as well. The addition of Xavier Chaplin, you upgrade the left tackle spot, but you also upgrade the left guard spot because you get to put Dylan Wade back there and stick him there for ideally 12 games of the season going into 2025. That impact, I think, is going to be massive for Auburn. Number two, the sleeper, the guy that not many people are talking about because we're talking about Jackson Arnold, we're talking about Eric Singleton. Ryan Strader from Miami of Ohio is elite. You take a look at what he did in the MAC last year, and again, there's that question mark about jumping from the MAC to the SEC. I don't have many question marks about it. Faced 103 targets last year at Miami of Ohio, 103. And this is a battle-tested cornerback that only allowed 61 catches. That's a 59% completion percentage when targeted, only 11% missed tackle rate. To me, this is a bona fide plug-and-play starting cornerback opposite Jay Crawford, who I think is going to be sweet for Auburn in 2025. And he kind of solidified that secondary, an Auburn secondary that's really, really talented. And we saw some true freshmen play some good football for Auburn in the 2025 year, but was probably a little bit young. Now, Ryan Strader's only going to be a true junior. He's only going into his third year of college football, but has played a ton of football coming from Miami of Ohio. So he's not like an inexperienced cat. So you add one, I think, a plug-and-play starter, plus a little bit more experience to the back end. People are going to talk about Eric Singleton. People are going to talk about Jackson Arnold, and rightfully so. Those are the two headliners in this portal class. Ryan Strader was a great get. Last one, the unsung hero. Not necessarily a guy that I think is going to be elite for Auburn, but a guy that I think they really didn't need, and that's Dallas Walker. Started all 12 games at nose tackle last year. And why I think this is so big for Auburn here is that the depth on the defensive line was thin and it was young. And there are some question marks, right? We feel really good about Malik Blockton going into year two. We feel really good. I mean, you pull up the depth chart here and go to the defensive side of the football. You feel really good about some of these true freshmen coming in, right? Malik Autry, Jordan Crawford, Antonio Coleman. I feel good about all of them. I was very vocal. I thought Auburn's defensive line class that they signed was elite, and that's going to pay dividends at some point for this Auburn program. But do you want to have to put yourself in a position where you have to rely on true freshmen if they're not ready? The answer is probably not. If you don't grab a guy like Dallas Walker, it's kind of a ready or not, Jordan Crawford, Malik Autry, Antonio Coleman, y'all are playing because we need you to play. Now it's, hey, if maybe one or two of them aren't ready, we still feel decent about the depth on the defensive line. And chances are one or two of them are going to be ready to contribute year one. But they don't necessarily need to be. And you're not put in a position where you have to throw 18-year-old kids along the line of scrimmage in the SEC when maybe they're not quite ready. I look at it and say, look, Auburn, and again, rounding out my take on this transfer portal class, it has to do with Jackson Arnold. Now, I am not choosing, I truly believe this, believe that Jackson Arnold can be a guy for Auburn. I think he's in a significantly better situation than and I use this comp, I'll say it till kickoff in August. It feels like Bo Nix, but in reverse. Right, Bo Nix, we kind of felt like was a good football player, but never got enough help around him at Auburn. He goes to Oregon, an offense that builds around him, that has the talent around him, and all of a sudden Bo Nix plays like a Heisman caliber quarterback. Look, I don't know if there are many quarterbacks that would have success in that Oklahoma offense in 2024. It was so bad. Going into 2025 in a new system with a better offensive line, with better pass catchers, there's real reason to believe Jackson Arnold can emerge as an absolute stud for Auburn. And I give Hugh Freeze a ton of credit for making that risk. Not enough coaches do that. Look, if you're Auburn, I'd rather risk national championship ceiling than a bad, like 8-4 or 8-5, 8-4, 9-3. Those are fun seasons to have. But if you're Auburn, at least as a fan, I'm a Michigan fan, like this is kind of how I feel about it. I'd rather Michigan push the chips in and go take some risks to become national championship caliber than just go 8-4. 8-4 is sweet. We'll have a fun season in the fall. National championship runs. That's the goal for a program like Auburn, especially under head coach Hugh Freeze. That's what we're looking for. I think that's what Jackson Arnold provides to this Auburn football team. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.